Okay, we are back. I'm very excited to have on the Goldstein on Gelt show Gideon Soesman, who co-founded a company called Greensoil. Before that, he was with a boutique investment bank, and in fact, he's got a lot of experience in the business world. Gideon, I'd like to talk to you about Greensoil and the work you're doing, but maybe give us a little bit of background, what it's all about.
So Greensoil is a fund we started around 4 years ago when we actually saw there's an enormous opportunity in investing in agrotech and food technologies. There are, in a couple of years, about 9 billion people in the world. They all need to eat. There's a lack of food. There's a lack of soil. And to close the gap, you need technologies. And Israel has a lot of those technologies. We hear a lot about the startup nation. But when we talk about the startup nation, we always talk about IT, communications. But this is another area of the startup nation. We saw the existence of it. But 4 years ago, there was not a lot of money going into that direction. So that's where we focused our investment thesis.
So people can begin to dream a little bit about what you're talking about. Give us an example of what you mean by something that's agrotech. The only thing I can remember is when I first came on my first trip to Israel decades ago, someone told me, "See how high tech Israel is? We have drip irrigation," and everyone thought that was the coolest thing. But there must be more developments since the advent of drip irrigation.
Oh, absolutely. And of course, everyone knows the story about Netafim that invented the drip irrigation. And they're now exporting their technology into the whole wide world. But we see a lot of companies, for example, that increase the yields of specific plants. Let me give you one example of one of our portfolio companies, Rootility. They've developed a root that by using this root, you can get much more yield out of your plant. So, for example, using this root, we now see tomato growers in California that get almost twice as many tomatoes on the same plant just by using a better root.
When you say that, what do you mean? A root as a fertilizer or a root
No, a
as...
root, just another root system. So this is a cross-breeding process. It's fully natural. So you get a root that is slightly bigger and stronger. It goes deeper into the soil. And by connecting, crafting this root to the existing tomato plant, and you get the same tomato, same taste, same color, everything the same, but you get almost twice as many tomatoes on one plant.
And
Now,
once you do this, does that tomato give off seeds that will then do the same thing, or is it all the time you have to graft the root?
well, luckily for us and for the company, every year you need to buy new seeds.
I see the investment opportunity here. Okay.
Oh yeah.
All right. So that's actually very fascinating. Can you give us another example of something new like that?
Yeah, another example which is becoming a little bit bigger in the agro technology sector is the whole area of precision agriculture. It's actually helping the growers, the farmers, to cope with so much of uncertainty in their profession. A farmer would like to know what the weather forecast is for tomorrow. He would like to know more about the soil, what's in there, what's lacking. So by instead of just trying all kind of farming processes, by using precision agriculture, he gets much more information about what's in the soil and what's missing, so he can really improve his farming processes.
So that means that there's some sort of device that you put into the soil and it gives you live feedback about what's going on
Yeah,
underground.
it can be a device in the soil. There are other technologies that use pictures from the air. So you can use different sensors, whether it's in the soil or in the satellite. But it gives you more information about what's happening in your farming. And in that case, farming becomes less of trial and error and more of a really science-based process.
And this is the type of technology that can be made usable so that the average farmer somewhere in the world could actually turn it on.
Yeah, and I mean, exactly this is one of the major challenges because there's a lot of technology out there, but the challenge is how do we get the farmer to use it? Because sensors, of course, there are many of them, but you also need to make it friendly enough for the farmer to be able to use the information, not give him like 1,000 pages of reports of what's in his soil, but really give him simple guidance of what he should do, what he should not do.
We're talking with Gideon Soesman, who has an extensive business background and has now turned his business expertise to the world of agrotech in Israel. He co-founded a company called Greensoil, and in fact, we don't even know exactly what your company does. So let's cut to that, and then I'm going to ask you a few more questions about agrotech in Israel.
So our company is a fund. It's a venture capital fund. We started here in Israel. We have a little bit more than $30 million under management. We've invested so far in 5 companies here in Israel. We're going to do a sixth investment in the coming few months. And after that, we will start raising our next fund in agro and food technologies, and also open an office in the Netherlands.
So you're expanding out of Israel. My question was going to be,
Yeah.
why do you think that agrotech is such a thriving Israel technology in Israel or industry in Israel? But now you're telling me you might also be looking beyond Israel. Is there something that the Netherlands and Israel have in common?
Well, there are a couple of hubs where you see a lot of innovation in this field. Holland is definitely one of them, but Israel also. Of course, Israel is a place where there's a lack of water. There's a lack of arable ground. 2/3 of the country is desert. As I always say, we only have 2 lakes, and one of them is even a Dead Sea. So you really need inventive technologies to be able to grow your own food. And of course, we need to grow our own food because we also cannot be dependent on our neighbors. So out of that need, a lot of technology has emerged. And it has become really a world power in agro and food technologies.
One of the things that I've noticed being in Israel, and I do get the opportunity to travel a fair bit, is that when I'm in Israel, it seems that pretty much everything that we eat agriculturally is local. You know, we go to the local markets and we're buying local food, whereas in the United States, people pride themselves on the fact that they can have on their dinner table food literally from every corner of the globe, which of course I find kind of funny if they're also trying to be green and they're flying in raspberries from South America, but that's a different story.
Yeah. So
But
so indeed in Israel we see a lot of local food, and again it's come out of a necessity, because if you want to import food, well, the closest market you can go to is Europe.
mhm.
Whereas in the States, the much bigger land, so there's more economies of scale. So you see tomatoes being shipped out of California, wheat being shipped out of the Midwest, and you really see hubs with different focus areas. But I think as this is evolving, I think in the future we will see more and more local initiatives. You already see grocery stores growing their own salads on the roof of the grocery store. And the reason for that is that all the logistics, it's not only very expensive, but it's also environmentally not a good thing to do. So I think going into the future, we'll see more and more local initiatives also in the United States.
So tell me more about who's actually doing the inventing, because one of the things that we've seen, for example, is, let's say in the world of biotech, a lot of times it's the doctors who are coming up with something, or medical technology. They're coming up with something that they really need, and they do have a scientific background, and they're able to develop it. And one of the things my brother, who is a patent attorney, told me is, he said, don't try to invent something that's not in your field, because you just won't understand it. And he pointed out that doctors do understand what they need. Do you find that there are people in the farming community who are coming up with these ideas, or coming from somewhere else?
Well, definitely. First of all, Israel has a few leading scientific institutions. There's the Volcani Institute, which is a government-led institute. There's the Rehovot, the Weizmann University in Rehovot. There's the big agriculture faculty of the Hebrew University. So there's really these are really 3 great scientific places where a lot is developed. And then, of course, also there are quite some big companies in Israel, and we also see that large international conglomerates are coming into Israel, mostly through acquisitions, but they also develop their R&D facilities here in Israel.
So, like all of the technology that Israel develops, or let's say one of the things that people complain about, is that it's ultimately getting sold off to a bigger international company?
Well, I don't think it's always being sold off, but of course, Israel is a very small country. One of the things of Israeli high-tech, and that's not only in agrotech, it's in all the fields of high-tech, what we see is that the Israeli startups tend to grow themselves for becoming global already from day one. And that's a huge difference between, for example, Israeli startups and European or American startups. Because in Europe and America, you have a large local market and you can really play around there. In Israel, it's impossible. I mean, of course, you can sell your products locally, but it's a very small market. So you immediately need to think, how can I sell into Europe or into the States? And for that, you need international partners.
All right. So as we're wrapping up, tell me something on the investment side. Is this an area that people should actually be looking to invest, or is it so specialized that the average person really wouldn't have an opportunity?
Oh, I definitely think it's a great area. I think every area where there's a real need, there's always a good investment case. And I think this need is only becoming bigger. I spoke about 9 billion people in the world, but what I didn't mention yet is that only a few of them today are eating a lot, and many of them are not eating so much. Half of the world is only starting to eat meat right now, which means that not only the people have to be fed, but also the cows. So the increase in demand of food is enormously. And then because of ecological problem and urbanization, we see that the supply of soil, of arable soil is problematic. So there's a huge need here. And that's where there's a great investment case.
All right. I'm very happy to hear that Israel is really at the forefront of developing solutions to this. We've been talking with Gideon Soesman, who is the head of a company called Greensoil, a venture capital firm. Gideon, in the last few seconds, just tell us, how can people learn more about you, your company, and the work that you're doing?
Well, we have a website. It's www.greensoil-investments.com. And there's a lot of information there on our firm and not less importantly, on our portfolio companies.
Okay, that's very exciting, certainly the work that you're doing. We will put a link to that at the show notes of today's Goldstein on Gelt show at goldsteinongelt.com. Gideon Soesman, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Goldstein on Gelt show with money maven Doug Goldstein. Doug's weekly radio show is heard around the world. And if you miss it, you can download the podcast at www.goldsteinongelt.com. The Goldstein on Gelt show gives you up-to-date financial ideas so you can get on the path to financial freedom. If you'd like your questions answered on the air or off, send Doug an email to doug@profile-financial.com. It's your money for your future, so join Doug every week to build your wealth on the Goldstein on Gelt show.